Hey, what is up guys? DRC3 here, back with another My Hero Ultra Impact video, and today we are finally going to be doing the new UR PvP or Ultra Arena tier list. There are going to be some massive changes from what it was last time. So this is last time's tier list you're seeing on the screen right now. I'm going to be changing a lot of things around, and I know usually it helps to just skip to the end of the video and see what I've done, but I would stick around for the entire video and listen to my reasoning behind all these characters, because I literally have like 4 pages of written down information about the characters I am moving around and why I'm moving them around. I put a lot of thought into this, and hopefully this will help you guys out. I am currently in Legend and Ultra Arena, so I've seen the most meta teams. I've worked my way all the way up from basically expert in the past 2 seasons because I slacked off on Ultra Arena for a bit. So I've also seen the least meta teams. So hopefully I have a pretty good idea of what is good and what's not. Before we get into this video though, I just want to reiterate, these are my opinions, of course. So if you disagree with them, feel free to share your ideas down in the comments. Be nice about it, you know, and let's get into this. All right, so the very first person I'm going to be moving Najire, the green Najire, who I have up here in SS difficulty. I've also added these little tags on for meta, sub-meta, competent, and stuff like that. Hopefully that helps you guys understand where they fit in Ultra Arena right now. So Najire, I'm moving her down to S tier because Fantasy Jiro and Ocean Sun or Araka are so much better and do a lot more with their evasion and their ability to hide. Basically, while Najire is still an amazing support, don't get me wrong, she's really good, she lacks their survivability, and because she lacks their survivability, she is easily killed. So we're going to move her down to S tier, where she's still sub meta but not quite in the current meta. This next one really pains me to move, but I am going to move them. Yellow Aizawa. I'm moving him down to S tier as well. While his binding and removing buffs is still very good, he just can't keep up with the current meta's damage. He's a little too squishy. He is still decent in a sub slot because he counts as a pro hero for the memory Justice Told, you know, the one that features Shinso on the front of the art, and that memory decreases the speed of the opponent and increases your own speed by 25%. So he's really good in a sub slot. But other than that, he's going to have a hard time. He's going to be bursted down very quickly in the current meta, and he's not able to exactly target who he wants to target to bind them and remove their buffs and stuff like that because of the evasion that Ocean Sun or Araka does and because of the hiding that Jiro does. So it makes it a little bit hard to use him. Also with the evasion and drawing aggro that Ida does, of course. I should include him in all of that giant confusing mess. Next, we have Blue All Might. Blue All Might definitely does not belong in S tier anymore. He doesn't even belong in S tier. So I'm actually going to be moving him down to A tier because Todoroki's barriers are no longer the problem. The reason I had All Might up there in S tier was because he could go through the barriers and ignore the barriers that Todoroki had. But since then, Ida has come out, and because of that, even at a type disadvantage, Ida is still able to just avoid or evade All Might, so All Might is not very good. And then additionally, All Might's speed is too low to like outspeed Ida, and so Ida's just basically always going to be able to draw All Might's aggro and evade him. So we're going to move All Might down to A tier, where he's still a competent character. He's just not going to do very well in the current meta. Moving down a tier to the S tier, some things are changing here as well. We're going to be moving Blue Kirishima down to A tier. So the reason for this is he lacks speed, and the barriers may keep you alive for a few turns. Like, don't get me wrong, his barriers are phenomenal, very good, but they won't allow you to win the game. They won't allow you to get a perfect like you want to get in Ultra Arena, and so for that reason, we're moving Blue Kirishima down to A tier. He's still a competent character. He can work well at the lower ranks, but if you get up into Legend, he is just not going to be very good. Next, we have World Heroes Todoroki. Of course, if we're moving Blue Kirishima down, you guys should have been able to guess that World Heroes Todoroki was going to move down as well to A tier. The reason being is because, like Kirishima, he lacks speed, and he is actually more likely to die than Kirishima because he has no defense, and realistically, Fantasy Jiro is a monster, and she'll have type advantage over him. So we're going to move him down as well. And then next, we're still moving a couple more. We're going to move Red Todoroki down, because if we're moving World Heroes Todoroki down, we definitely have to move Red Todoroki down. Red Todoroki's Frostbite is still really good for disrupting skill chains, but the problem is Frostbite can no longer land because of Fantasy Jiro and Ocean Sun Araka, because Fantasy Jiro nullifies status elements and Ocean Sun Araka gives evasion, nullifies status elements, and therefore I'm actually going to move him all the way down to B tier. He's going to go even below the Blue World Heroes Missions Todoroki, because Blue World Heroes Missions Todoroki is still a little bit more useful. The fact that Red Todoroki status elements just really have no chance to land anymore, he's going to be very situational when you can use him. And then also being red, it's just going to make him hard to use. All right, next we have Blue Hawks. So we have skipped over Green Hawks. Green Hawks gets to stay. Blue Hawks does not. We're going to move Blue Hawks down to A tier. While he has a fairly high base speed, he does not increase his own speed with an auto skill or an action skill like Green Hawks does, and he also doesn't have any evasion. So he is still good because he can prevent 2 status elements, like that's still one useful aspect of him. But at the same time, because he doesn't have evasion like Green Hawks, because he doesn't have a speed buff, we're going to move him down to A tier. We're going to keep him in competent. He's a competent character, but he just doesn't belong in S tier. He's not really part of the sub meta anymore at this point. The next character we're going to be moving, we're moving down to the A tier. We're going to be moving some of these guys around. It's actually 2 characters. We're going to be moving Yukata Deku and Yellow Present Mike. We're going to move them both down to B tier, because they don't offer a lot to your team besides making your characters ecstatic, and they also lack speed and they lack status elements, and let's be honest, they're fairly squishy. So we're going to move them both down to B tier, where they are situational and they can be used in certain situations, but they're not going to be like competent characters for a normal PvP Ultra Arena team. The next character we're going to be moving is Red All Might. He is also going to be moved down to B tier because he is also squishy. He has no speed and he also has a low health pool. He's just way too easily killed compared to the Blue All Might, who can at least do barrier penetration. So because Blue All Might has barrier penetration going for him, he's going to stay up here, but Red All Might goes down to situational as well because he just doesn't have a ton going on for him, but he can be used in certain situations. Next we have Red Yayorozu. She is going to, unfortunately for right now, be moved down to B tier. I could see her being moved back up in the future potentially if the meta shifts away from speed and towards defense, but for right now she's going to be moved down to B tier because she lacks survivability and can be bursted down quickly. If she makes it to turn 3, she gets a last stand, so she has some survivability, but she'll probably die before that. So we're going to move Red Yayorozu down to situational. She's a decent support, but realistically she has to be below Green Ochako. Green Ochako has the evasion, and evasion is really, really useful right now in the current PvP meta. So yeah, she's definitely situational. Next, we're going to be moving a character that this might surprise you a little bit, but I've seen it a few times in Ultra Arena. I don't know if everybody's seen it, but I was like, wow, that's actually really, really good. We're going to be moving Mount Lady here, who is in A tier. We're going to be moving her up to S tier because of her bullseye skill that guarantees her moves hit. This is a very valuable skill with the current dodge / speed / hide meta, and a level 130 Mount Lady can do some real damage because she has 2 attack all skills, so it doesn't matter if Ida's drawing your aggro, if they're hiding like Jiro does or anything like that, she'll hit all the enemies, so she can be very, very good. The tricky part here is if they have a Kirishima, or not a Kirishima, a Kaminari with the status element counter, the fantasy Kaminari, then she can end up paralyzing herself if she attacks all, so she could be a little bit tricky to use. So we're going to put her in S tier right there, but Mount Lady could actually be very, very useful, and I'm happy to move this character up to S tier. It makes me happy to move some new characters up and not just move all the characters down. Next, we have Blue Sue. Blue Sue is down here in C tier, which is, these are characters you generally would use just to have a little bit of fun. With the new hiding that Jiro can do, Camouflage could be a really interesting pair with Jiro. So I'd move her up to situational for that reason alone, because if you run Jiro, Sue, and then maybe Fantasy Ida, then you have Camouflage, you have Jiro hiding, and they have to target Fantasy Ida. You're increasing crit rate with the Sue, you're increasing healing with Jiro, and nullifying status elements. So it could be a really interesting team, and it could be a situational team that you could use for a bit of fun. Next, we're going to be moving another character up. We're going to be moving Purple Danky Kaminari up to C tier. He has the best attack plus ultra in the game. And now if you get his basic board high enough, he has a lower chance to stun your teammates. He lacks speed, but he can still... So like his bad things are he lacks speed and he can still stun your teammates. But the fact that he has the hardest hitting plus ultra in the game and the fact that he has a lower chance to stun your teammates means he could potentially wipe a whole team. So we're going to put him in C tier because he could be a fun character to use. Actually, he could really be a situational character, but we're going to keep him in C tier for right now just because of the fact that he could still stun your teammates. So that makes him very situational. These characters down here in D and F are going to stay here because these two characters, I would argue, are low value for right now. They're not a lot of uses, no status elements, nothing really going on for them. And then this green Deku, I just have a grudge against him. He's not very good. Arguably, he could be a low value character as well, but he just hurts himself, and I think that's the dumbest thing for a character to do. So that is all the characters we're going to be switching for right now in the tier list. We do need to, of course, place the new characters now. We have a bunch of new characters to place. We're going to go hopefully in order of how they released for the most part, starting with Red Hawks, then we're going to do Present Mike, the green one, Fantasy Kaminari, Fantasy Jiro, Christmas Sue, and then we're also, like I said, going to place the New Year's characters to the best of my ability just based on what we read from their kits. They might change a little bit, just keep that in mind because they're obviously not out yet. So starting with Red Hawks, he has no speed buffs like Green Hawks and can't nullify status ailments like Blue Hawks. But what can he do? So what he can do is gain evasion after 3 attacks, reduce enemies' power, has piercing shot, and increases his own skill impact by absurd amounts when his own defense is decreased, which kind of sucks. He also shortens his own action skills, which already have really low cooldowns. And so because of all these things like mixed together, I'm going to place him in A tier because it seems like he's a competent character, but he's just pretty squishy and that makes him hard to use. But the fact that he gains evasion after taking 3 attacks makes him okay to use to some degree. So that's where we're going to place Red Hawks. Next, we're going to go with Green Present Mike. So this guy right here, he is an interesting character and he's kind of like a character you wouldn't expect to be as good as he is, kind of like Mount Lady. So he increases your pro hero speed. He increases skill impact and plus ultra gauge of all allies. He lowers the enemy's speed. He cancels enemy buffs. He can confuse the opponents, multiple opponents at a time, and has Bullseye that can guarantee his moves hit on the enemies, just like Mount Lady. Bullseye is a super valuable skill right now, guys. This makes him very, very good against the current evasion hiding speed meta. Like it makes him very, very decent. So for all of these reasons, we are actually going to put Green Present Mike up in S tier. A level 130 Green Present Mike could literally do some massive damage to an enemy team. Green Present Mike is a lot better than I think people gave him credit for originally, and people are going to be wanting to pull extra copies of him now. Next, we're going to be placing the Fantasy Kaminari. Fantasy Kaminari right off the back is not going to be double S tier. I'll tell you guys that right now. So let's talk about why. He is very good in a sub slot. His status element counter is phenomenal, like really, really good. He has a massive HP pool. He also has a Bullseye that ignores evasion when he uses his plus ultra, but here's the kicker, his HP has to be above 60% for it to be a Bullseye, which kind of sucks. The reason he isn't double S tier is because of what I just said, HP has to be above 60%, and also because the chance for his status element counter, the chance for his status elements to land, just simply aren't high enough to make him as good as I would like him to be, and I think as good as a lot of people would like him to be. So for that reason, Kaminari is still very, very good. Fantasy Kaminari, don't get me wrong, is amazing, but just not quite as good as some of these other characters up here in the double S tier in the meta. So I'm going to put him in S tier for sub meta right now. And we'll see if that changes in the future. But for right now, I feel very confident and okay with putting him right there. The next character we're going to talk about is Fantasy Jiro. Fantasy Jiro, it should be to no one's surprise that this character is going to go into double S tier. Her ability to nullify status ailments at the start of battle is broken, especially when you pair her with Ocean Sun or Araka, who gives a speed buff when she has the ability to nullify status ailments. Additionally, Fantasy Jiro is tanky, she has an attack all, she can confuse opponents, and she has a passive healing over time, and she can hide from opponents. Like, this character can do so much and is actually just really, really ridiculous. So for that reason, Fantasy Jiro goes in double S tier. She is part of the current meta, obviously, and you'll see her run pretty much on every team of everyone who is able to pull her. Next, we have Christmas Sue. I really, really wanted this Christmas Sue. I actually just recently pulled her. If you haven't checked that video out, go check that out. But she is a very mid character currently, but perhaps she's someone who could be very good in the future of PvP if PvP happens to be able to shift towards defense teams and speed teams. Like, I don't mind keeping the speed teams, but we need more than just speed being the meta, you know? So what can she do? She regenerates the HP of all allies passively. She reduces damage to all allies. She increases the speed of all allies. She reduces the power of all opponents and increases the plus ultra move skill impact of all allies. Like, she's doing a lot, guys. She's actually, like, that's a lot of stuff going on. Her paired with the New Year's Todoroki, I'm telling you guys, could be very, very interesting. We'll have to wait until he comes out to see. But so because of all those things she can do right now, I'm going to place her in A tier. I would say she is a solid character. She's every bit as good as the Kirishima. She's every bit as good as Twice with her defense. I would say she's probably better because she offers healing. She's a better support. So she's actually a pretty good A tier unit. And I know I didn't mention it before, but these characters in the tiers are not in any specific order. So this doesn't mean Red Kirishima is better than Christmas Sue. Christmas Sue might be better. They're just all generally in the same tier. So keep that in mind when you look at this tier list. But she is definitely A tier. She is a competent character, and she could potentially be looking at S tier later on once the New Year's characters come out and we try new teams and new things out. All right, now the moment you may have been waiting for. We're going to talk about the New Year's characters that have yet to release and where we're going to place them. Once again, this could change once Deku comes out, once Todoroki come out. So just keep that in mind. We haven't tried them out yet, and things always look different when you try the character out in game. Okay, so this character right here, Deku, has Bullseye, which is already very, very important to take into account because that is going to help us with the current speed evasion meta. He also gets 2 last stands, which is ridiculous. He can stun the opponent, which basically means they don't get to do their skill, which is great. He decreases the opponent's speed by a whopping 40%, which is massive. He increases his own critical hit rate and critical skill impact. I think it's by like 50%, so he's going to hit like a truck, and increases his own power and defense the more crits he lands. So he's just going to be ridiculous. And if built right, he can be a literal monster in PvP. So for all of these reasons, I'm actually going to put, and this feels so weird to say, but I'm going to put a Deku up in S tier, which is amazing for a Deku. And I feel actually pretty confident putting him into S tier, looking at his kit and looking at what he can do. I feel like he's better than all the other ones. I don't think he's quite as good as the Fantasy Deku yet, because that guy is just ridiculous, really, really good in a sub slot. But I'm expecting big things from this Deku. I really, really am. So I'm excited to see how he does. He also has decent cooldowns, so he's just an overall decent character. Okay, next we have the last character to talk about, and that is the New Year's Todoroki. This guy is really interesting because he is a defensive character, like I was saying, that I feel will pair really, really well with Christmas Sue. Okay, so let's talk about what he can do. He reduces damage to all allies by 30% for 3 turns. He decreases the skill impact of all opponents by 20% for 3 turns. Okay, so that paired with Christmas Sue's reduction of power and increased defensive allies, it's going to be ridiculous. He has Frostbite and Burn, so 2 status ailments. He increases the plus ultra gauges and speed of all allies. And he shortens his own action skill cooldown times. Wow, this guy is insane. The one bad thing about him is his action skill cooldown times, but if he's reducing those, it's not as big of a deal. And then because of all this and the speed buff to allies, if he's ecstatic, I'm going to put him in A tier for now. but it could turn out that him and Christmas Sue put together could both make it to S or double S tier. So like, I'm not sure yet. We'll have to see how these two pair together, but for now, on their own, I would argue they are competent characters, and they could potentially become sub-meta / meta characters if we are able to develop some sort of defensive team that is able to actually beat all the ridiculous speed teams that are in the game right now. So these are all of my characters in the current tier list for PvP, for Ultra Arena. Hopefully this will help you guys out. If you guys enjoyed the video, please go down there, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I do a bunch of tier lists like this every few months. I cover the news on My Hero Ultra Impact. I do a bunch of showcase videos. I take on all the climax battles and events. So if you guys want tips, tricks for My Hero Ultra Impact, please go down there, hit that subscribe button. I am trying to reach 10,000 subscribers. I have been completely humbled this year by getting to 1,000 subscribers in less than a year. Thank you guys so much for that. I appreciate everyone that has subscribed. I appreciate all of you guys watching my videos. I just want to once again give a massive shout out to you guys. Thank you so much. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Peace.